This repair, we're going to be epoxying a plastic tank onto the aluminum or copper brass radiator. This repair is good for when your crimps are weak. You see a lot of this in your Ford radiators, also in some GMs and some foreign cars. Your preparation of your parts, all this has been glass beaded and degreased down into the gasket trough itself and on the outside of the tabs. If you'll take notice to the tank itself has been glass beaded along the edges, on the inside edge, the whole way around. This is going to make a good cleaning surface for us, or a clean surface that the epoxy will stick. This has also been degreased. Now, to flow our epoxy, we're looking about 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch bead. In my opinion, you can't use too much epoxy in this repair, just short of, wasting it dripping on the ground. But the most important part of this is, just like soldering, you want to have an ample amount of penetration on the inside that your tank and epoxy and header are like one unit. Okay, being the whole way around. By the way, I even degreased the gasket. Put that in place. And the epoxy will help hold it down in there for you. Once that's down and into place, we're going to run another bead of epoxy over top. You must use a gasket in this repair. Your gasket is acting like a shim, not only to help seal, but to help lift that tank up off the bottom of your header plate so your tabs will fold over at the right depth. Ample enough epoxy in there the whole way around. We'll seat our tank into place. Now, a little secret to doing this: when you put this up into your jig, you go to tighten it down, we want to tighten this down in stages. To allow that gasket and the epoxy to squish together, when you're tightening it down, you'll notice the epoxy squishing out between the tabs. What I like to do is I like to tighten it down in 3 different stages. Get her down to where you think she's pretty tight, and then just wait for a second or two. Allow that epoxy to squish and to flow out into the areas for sealing. When you go back to tighten it up again, you'll feel that you'll have a little further way to go, that you can tighten out just a little bit more, and then just wait again for a few more seconds. Allow that epoxy to flow out through. Okay, on your final tightening, you'll feel the tank will go down into where it's seated back to its original position. Now if you'll notice, we did get some epoxy squishing out through here. I'd like to get a little bit more in there than that. Now's the time to add it. I want to actually epoxy those tabs down into place. So we're going to run a little bit of epoxy on the outside here to make sure we get a nice smooth surface around all the tabs, up over the tabs, and onto the tank. At this point we can go down through and set our tabs. Acid swab, we can smooth that out, get any excess off and push that back along the tank so it actually does cover up the tubes, or cover up the tabs. And one of the most important thing about doing this, before you cure this, make sure you put this in a relaxed state. That way when, if you wouldn't do that, when you'd unlock it, the tank's liable to pull away if the epoxy isn't fully cured. At this point we can go for the full cure. A little bit of heat, the epoxy thins out for you, and you can brush and neaten it up while you're in your curing process. Make sure you don't heat it hot enough that the epoxy starts bubbling. If it does, immediately stop and allow it to cure with the heat that's already built up into the core itself from the heat gun. Guaranteed that tank will never leak again. Once again, once you start to see the epoxy change color, the very start of it, you want to cut your heat and allow it to cure the rest of the way on its own. This will be the tank upon completion, ready for testing or putting in the vehicle.